Talk boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Canelo Alvarez is being accused of, get this,
what?
Racism due to his choice of opponents, and his accuser is none other than Claressa Shields.
Is she serious?
American boxer Claressa Shields has accused Mexican fighter Canelo Alvarez of racism in relation to the opponents that he chooses to enter the ring with. He is currently the reigning super middleweight champion, and his recent victory over Gennady Golovkin, he is also widely regarded as the best pound-for-pound boxer in the world.
Wait, she's saying that Canelo's a racist based on who he fights?
So what's wrong with who he fights? He's fighting more active reigning world champions and taking their belts. He's fighting more of those than anybody else. They're champions. Does it matter what color their skin is? Does it matter where they're from?
Doesn't it matter that they're champions? Doesn't it matter that these are the people he had to fight in order to see himself become an undisputed champion? Doesn't that matter?
Apparently not. Not to Claressa.
You know what's the funniest thing? The first world champion Claressa ever fought was a Caucasian woman.
What, you're the only one who's allowed to fight Caucasian fighters? Is that how this works? Nikki Adler, Christina Hammer, Ivana Habazin. What were they?
And what's Savannah Marshall, the girl you're about to fight? The champion.
Where's she from? Ain't she from the same part of the world as Callum Smith and Billy Joe Saunders and Rocky Fielding?
What, you're the only fighter that's allowed to fight Brits? If Canelo does it, he's a racist, but when you do it, it's okay?
How does this work? What is it exactly that Claressa Shields is proposing?
Just trying to enforce affirmative action on Canelo Alvarez.
Sounds like it. It sounds a lot like Claressa is misappropriating an actual issue based on her own personal preferences and perspectives.
When this is no issue at all.
Claressa Shields was quoted as saying, Demetrius Andrade could beat anyone. I love Charlo and have a lot of respect for Benavidez, but Andrade is superior. He tried to put pressure on Canelo, but for real, Canelo doesn't want to fight Mexican fighters, but he doesn't want to fight black fighters either, Shields said. We have to get this going, so I want to see Canelo versus Andrade against Charlo and against Benavidez. Those are the big fights that all the fans want to see. As a fan, those are the fights I want to see.
Claressa's not the only person that's ever levied these kinds of criticisms against Canelo. In truth, we see it here in the YouTube boxing community all the time.
Whenever we see it, the critics never tell the whole story. They never tell the story of how Jermall Charlo 2.5 to 3 years ago was offered a Canelo Alvarez fight. Both Roberto Diaz and Oscar De La Hoya themselves attested to that.
Ain't no big Charlo, none of that. It's big male, big mall, big whatever. I'm 154. I ain't the one. I would never turn down no motherfucking Canelo. Y'all know what it is. I ain't never turning my money down.
That Jermall Charlo was offered that fight, and Jermall Charlo's people rejected it.
So you don't believe he ducking?
Ducking who? I feel like he don't. I don't think he's ducking.
He never ducked Charlo, in your opinion?
No, because I feel
neither Charlo.
No, because it's proven fact that he tried to Canelo them offered him the fight. He turned it down. And I got this word from his brother himself. And so
from Jamel.
From Jamel, out his mouth. Because when they beef, they like Cain and Abel. So all the dark secrets come out.
They never tell the whole story.
They never tell the whole story. They never tell you the story of how, before leaving the middleweight division, when he was a unified champion there, Canelo Alvarez had a mandatory due by way of the IBF, and he petitioned the IBF for an exemption to that mandatory so he could move forward with a Demetrius Andrade fight. And that petition was rejected. The IBF held to their word. He had to fight his mandatory, who at that time was Sergey Derevianchenko, at which point they entered into negotiations, but could not come to an agreement when it came to the money. Thus, the fight never happened, and Canelo was stripped, thereby dashing his goal of becoming an undisputed middleweight champion. And when he saw couldn't be undisputed anymore, not at middleweight, he decided to move up.
They never tell the whole story.
Think about what's being said here. Think about what's being implied. That Canelo Alvarez has an aversion to facing black fighters, yet Canelo, as a middleweight, faced more black champions than both Demetrius Andrade and Jermall Charlo. He unified titles with then IBF champion Daniel Jacobs.
How many black champions has Demetrius Andrade fought at middleweight?
0.
How many has Jermall Charlo fought?
0.
When Eddie Hearn offered Jermall Charlo $7 million to box Demetrius Andrade, did he take him up on that offer? Did those two guys fight each other?
No, they didn't. It seems like Claressa Shields, like some others, is expecting Canelo Alvarez to do all the legwork. These guys ain't got to fight nobody halfway decent, nobody good, and they ain't even got to fight each other. They get to stand online, single file, waiting for Canelo Alvarez to fight all of them. And I hate to break the news to Claressa, Canelo's critics, but that's not how this works.
It's not.
You don't get yourself to the point to where you're the cash cow of boxing to take orders from Clarissa Shields or anyone else.
Oh, fuck.
And if Clarissa Shields herself has some aversion to Canelo facing European fighters or Caucasian fighters, perhaps she should stop fighting so many of them herself. Anybody she ever won a belt from was a Caucasian.
Should we start looking down on her opponents the way she's looking down on his? You know, because they're Caucasian.
This is gaslighting, is what it is. She says that the fight fans want to see Canelo versus Charlo, or Canelo versus Andrade, or Canelo versus Benavidez more than the fighters that he has been fighting, when in truth, the paying public just wants to see Canelo, irrespective of who's opposite the ring. Now, some fights
do yield a little more commercial value than others. Some do.
but for the most part, it's Canelo Alvarez bringing the bulk of the revenue, the bulk of the attention to the table. Not Benavidez.
Nope.
Not Charlo.
Nope.
And not Andrade. Especially not Charlo and Andrade. Neither one of those two fighters have even fought this year. So what is this woman talking about?
The inconvenient truth is, nobody checks for either of those fighters.
Nobody cares. Canelo Alvarez can fight them, or he cannot fight them. In any event, his paying public is going to show up. And it's his paying public that Charlo and Andrade want access to.
Because they don't have a paying public of their own.
That makes them victims? Victims of a crime? What crime is that?
The truth is, you're just mad that those fighters, they ain't got the numbers. That's what you're really mad about.
What's so special about Guillermo Charlo? What's so special about Demetrius Andrade? What, that they're two unbeaten two-division champions? So was Billy Joe Saunders.
Except he actually had a belt that Canelo Alvarez could win.
But I guess you don't give Canelo credit for fighting Brits, Europeans, even though you're about to fight one yourself.
So should we deprive you of the same credit you're depriving him?
Clarissa Shields does fancy herself the GOAT. The greatest woman of all times. Greatest for fighting who? Winning belts from who? Europeans. That's who.
The only active champions she actually won belts from are Nikki Adler from Germany, Christina Hammer from Germany,
And Marie-Eve Dicaire of Canada.
2 Europeans and 1 Canadian, all Caucasian.
Want all the credit in the world for fighting those girls, but Canelo, he can't get any credit. Is that how this works?
What? Demetrius Andrade's supposed to be a victim? He's supposed to be some kind of charity case? Canelo owes him something?
The fuck does Canelo Alvarez owe him? As far as I'm concerned, Canelo can fight those guys or he cannot fight those guys. He can fight Dimitri for a second time. It's Canelo who people pay to see, not them.
And you need to understand that. They do too.
And if you and those guys don't want to understand that, hey, who gives a fuck anyway?
There's no demand for those guys. The truth hurts.
We now know that Demetrius isn't going to be boxing Zach Parker, and we talked about that here on the channel. There were 2 purse bids for that Zach Parker fight, one worth $1.8 million, and the more recent purse bid only being worth $300,000.
And I wouldn't pity Demetrius Andrade's current predicament if I didn't have the sneaking suspicion that when he pulled out injured, the first time out, when he pulled out injured, he wasn't actually injured.
Demetrius Andrade over time has developed a reputation for being a bit of a waffler, a guy that pulls out of fights. We know that several years ago, he pulled out of a Jermel Charlo fight. In more recent years, there were supposed to be negotiations for a Sergey Didivianchenko fight, back when Sergey was still an undefeated fighter, and Sergey's management said Demetrius pulled out. So when I think about those situations, and I see this situation, I just get the sneaking suspicion that when Demetrius pulled out of the Parker fight the first time, he wasn't injured.
Bullshit.
Demetrius was caught between a rock and a hard place. As a reigning champion, he had a mandatory due in the high-risk, low-reward fighter, Yanibek Alim Kanuli. That was at 160 pounds.
And his plan seemed to have been to move up to 168. Fight for an interim title there against Zach Parker.
But I just get the sneaking suspicion that when he pulled out of that fight, he wasn't actually injured. Somewhere along the way, he just changed his mind. He didn't want to do it. Maybe it was the money, or maybe he just didn't feel comfortable boxing on a Frank Warren show against the house fighter, Zach Parker. Maybe that's what it was. Didn't want to do that, having to travel abroad to do it in Zach Parker's neck of the woods. In any event,
Look,
the longer I think about it, the more I think about it, the more I don't believe Demetrius Andrade's story. I just don't.
don't sell me this fucking dream that he's this special fighter, he's a special fighter, and he's got to do all this to get out of a Yanibek fight.
Bullshit. If he were the kind of fighter that Canelo Alvarez has to avoid, fighting a guy like Yanni Beck shouldn't have been a problem. If anything, he should have used that situation as a negotiation bargaining chip to get money and siphon it out of Top Rank, because Top Rank is invested in Yanni Beck Alimkhanuly. So, as the defending champion, back when he still was a defending champion, he could have used that to his advantage. But he didn't want that fight. You have to ask yourself a question. If it were Jaime Munguia that Demetrius Andrade would have been ordered to fight, would he have decided to leave the division then? If it were Jaime Munguia who the WBO assigned as Demetrius Andrade's mandatory challenger, would he have decided to throw his belt in the air, see about going upstairs to 168? You know the answer.
And so do I. Everybody does.
Everybody, underneath it all, they know the answer to that question. If it were Jaime Munguia instead of Yanni Beck Alimkhanuly, Demetrius wouldn't have bothered with Zach Parker or Frank Warren or any of that stuff. He would have stayed right there. But because Yanni Beck is a high-risk, low-reward guy, Demetrius wanted to haul tail, move up north to Zach Parker.
To fight him till he realized, maybe this isn't going to be as easy as I originally thought.
Maybe I don't want to have to travel to the UK, go to Derby, to box Zach Parker in Zach Parker's neck of the woods, especially when he's the house fighter on a Frank Warren show. Maybe I don't want to do that, so he pulls out of that thing.
That's what I think happened. He posted this via his social media.
Image with a caption that reads, "We're just getting started. Keep calm. Hashtag, it's me again."
You want to know the truth? Here's the truth. Demetrius Andrade was avoided by one or two fighters. He was, but he did some avoiding of his own.
Where Gennady Golovkin and Jermall Charlo might have avoided Demetrius, years ago, avoided Jermell Charlo. He avoided Sergey Didivianchenko. He avoided Arislandi Lara. He thought it more important to fight Jack Colquet instead of his rival, Arislandi Lara. More recently, he avoided Yanni Beck Alimkhanuly, and he seems to have waffled. He seems to have bottled it with Zach Parker. He might have wanted it at first, but he thought twice and decided to pull out.
So yeah, he was avoided by one or two guys, but he did some avoiding of his own.
I don't know what the future holds for this guy. I get the sense that he's working on something, and hopefully it's against someone significant, someone of some note. Maybe a John Ryder, maybe a David Benavidez. The Morrell fight fell through for Benavidez. He's in the market for an opponent. Fight that guy.
I'm sick of hearing about how all these guys' careers, their individual careers, seem to hinge on whether or not they can get a Canelo fight.
Canelo ain't your personal Jesus, and you ain't no charity case.
Fuck the bullshit.
You're telling me that all these fucking guys that are around this weight, they can't fight in a significant fight, a meaningful fight. Not a single one of these fucking guys, not a Charlo, not an Andrade, not a Benavidez, not one of these guys can fight in a significant fight because they're all waiting on Canelo.
That's a lot of fucking bullshit. That's bullshit.
You guys are playing it safe because you're scared you're gonna get your cherry popped by somebody else, and you want to save yourself for Canelo. That's what's going on, and I don't want to hear it.
And that's why nobody checks for you. That's why nobody checks for your fights. When you're gone, nobody notices.
Because when you're actually around, it's not like you're giving people the kind of fights they want to see anyway. All you guys are playing it safe.
It's fucking nauseating.
Clarissa Shields wants to make Demetrius Andrade to be some kind of victim, some kind of fucking charity case, because Canelo don't care about this guy. Hey, newsflash, a lot of guys don't care about Demetrius.
Gennady didn't care. Charlo didn't care. Canelo didn't care. So take a number.
As far as Canelo Alvarez is concerned, Canelo himself said, "I'm going to take my time coming back from wrist surgery. Maybe May, maybe September. I'm going to take my time," Alvarez said during a post-fight press conference early Sunday morning after the Golovkin fight at the T-Mobile Arena. "My body needs rest. You know, last year, I fought 4 times in 11 months. So that is why. But I need to take my time a little bit. Maybe May, September, I don't know. But I'm going to take my time." He fought 4 times in the course of 11 months last year, and he fought 2 more times this year. That's 2 more times than either Demetrius Andrade or Jermall Charlo have boxed this year.
And these are the people you expect me to feel sorry for?
I'll tell you something, sweetheart. I've said it many times in the past. I'm going to say it again here and now. If it were that easy to unify the super middleweight division, either Demetrius Andrade or Charlo would have done it. David Benavidez would have done it. If it were easy as Canelo's critics make it out to be. Critics like Clarissa Shields, who thinks she can pose a guilt trip to the boxing community, making these fighters out to be victims when they are anything but.
They're not victims of some tragedy, some travesty. They're not victims of a crime.
They're victims of anything. They are victims of how their own careers are being managed, how they are navigating through this boxing landscape, this boxing cosmos.
Now, David Benavidez, he's in a pole position to become Canelo's mandatory by way of the WBC. And perhaps at some point, they will order that fight.
But don't expect me to give Canelo Alvarez shtick when he's a more active boxer, certainly more accomplished than David Benavidez. Hell, Canelo has already fought 2 times this year. When's David getting back out there? Because all he's done is splatter and over the hill David Lemieux.
The idea that nobody can fight in a meaningful fight is ridiculous to me. All these guys, this proliferation of fighters at or around these weights.
A lot of these guys are fucking useless. Useless, in my humble opinion. None of them really deserves a Canelo Alvarez fight any more than the other. All 3 of those guys are interchangeable as far as I'm concerned. And the only guy that I think would deserve a Canelo Alvarez fight above all others, well, it's not those 3 guys. It's the winner of Dimitri Bivol versus Zurdo Ramirez. You ask me, who'd really deserve a Canelo Alvarez fight anywhere at or around these weights? It's the winner of that fight. More than Jamal, more than Demetrius, and more than David.
What are you going to tell me? That fighting Jamal, fighting Demetrius, and fighting David is more dangerous, more risky than going back to light heavyweight?
Canelo's already been up there 2 times. Fought 2 champions both times he went up there. That's 2 more times than Jamal's ever been up there. 2 more times than Demetrius, and 2 more times than David Benavidez. Big for nothing, David Benavidez.
Guy's big for nothing.
No reason, still wading in the kiddie pool at 168 pounds because he don't want to swim on the deep end where the sharks are in the light heavyweight division. You ask me if anybody at or around these weights deserves a Canelo Alvarez fight. More so than all others, it's the winner of Ramirez versus Bivol.
And all those other guys can go fuck themselves.
Let's get the hell out of here!
You fucking idiot! What the fuck are you doing? Go away! Go away!
Guys just standing around, single file, taking up space, all asking for the same guy.
You ain't got nothing better to do?
You're telling me it's impossible for you to fight in a meaningful fight unless it's with Canelo.
Oh, go away! Go away!